Well, hello, everyone. So nice to see people show up. I'm going to keep letting people in for a minute or two. We have had a remarkable response to this workshop. Um, Remarkable in that we may not have room for everybody. So it's very smart, all of you that showed up early. Let me let a few more people in and then I'll get started. Oops. I want to thank all of you for being here today. We appreciate it. Good afternoon. I'm Devin Stone. I am owner and partner in construction programs and results, markupandprofit.com. I'm sitting right here next to my partner in business and in life, Michael Stone. Michael is the author of the books Markup and Profit, A Contractor's Guide Revisited, and Profitable Sales, A Contractor's Guide, and Estimating Construction Profitably. I just wanted to say a few words before we get started. Michael and I have been holding workshops for the past year featuring successful contractors and their keys to success. And Jen and Forrest Castile were featured last May with Castile Kitchen and Bath in Eugene, Oregon. At the time, many of those who attended were interested in more detail on how Castile Kitchen and Bath operated, particularly some of the things Forrest mentioned about production. So that's why we're holding this workshop, to hear more from Forrest. Forrest and Jen are longtime coaching clients, one-on-one coaching with Michael beginning in 2015. They attended our two-day intensive class back when the classes were live in 2016, and they've stayed in touch ever since. Our motto is posted on the bottom of our website, and it closes every one of our newsletters. Our motto is, "We like to see the good guys win." If you want to hear a secret, that motto came from a friend in the business, maybe 20 or 25 years ago. We were talking on the phone and he asked us how business was doing, and we told him, and his response was, "That's great. I love to see the good guys win." Michael and I decided that was a good motto for us because that's what our business is about, helping good guys win. We believe most contractors are interested in doing the right thing for their clients. At the same time, we want to see them do the right thing for their business and their family. It's not mutually exclusive. You can do both. Forrest is one of the good guys, so we're tickled he's doing this presentation today. If you have any questions while Forrest goes along, post them in the chat window. Forrest, I should have asked this earlier. Do you want me to interrupt you if there's a pertinent question, or do you want to hold them all till the end?
I think just follow your intuition on that. If there's something that you think is relevant that we should be talking to, go ahead and jump in. And if it's something that should wait, we'll just wait. I'll follow your lead on that. Thanks, Dylan.
Okay, all right. So post your questions in the chat window. And with that, Forrest, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thanks, Devin. Thanks, Michael. Welcome, everybody. It's really, really great having you here. And I appreciate the chance to share some of the wisdom we picked up over the years. Today, I'm ruminating on or appreciating the opportunity to come back and kind of close the loop with Michael and Devin here. We started this journey over a decade ago, and we were really struggling with our ceiling. Like, we'd hit this $250,000 a year number, and we're just really struggling to figure out how to get beyond that. And I did a personal assessment and a business assessment, and realized that given what we knew with the tools we had, the knowledge we had, the experience we had, I wasn't going to be able to succeed or move beyond that point without some help. And so, after doing some research on where to go for the very best coaching and support for this kind of stuff, I found Michael Stone and called Michael, and he answered the phone. I was like, "Oh, it's Michael." And he encouraged me first to buy the books. He was like, "You're going to get the most value out of these books." And sure enough, I did. The Markup and Profit book was just earth-shaking for me, and the knowledge that was in there and how I was able to put that to work. And then the Profitable Sales, transforming me from an order taker to a problem solver in our community. And that was kind of the essence of the Profitable Sales model for me anyways, was like, oh, how to show up and really get in there with the folks that need help and figure out what it is that's bugging them and how to really meet them there, and put together the pieces so that they could have the project of their dreams, rather than like making a list of stuff and giving them a price and hoping it gets stuck. And so between those two books, and then with Michael's coaching and support for the long time that we worked together, we were able to and over the last decade anyways, we were able to totally transform our business, build systems and processes, and build tools and skills to where, this year our projection is a $5 million number, which is, and the first 4 months of the year are looking like it's going to be straight across that way. And that's amazing. But not just the volume, but the profitability, which is just right in line with where it should be. And I'm just so grateful to be able to come back around after all this time, close the loop. And now we've been teaching other remodelers across the nation how to do this stuff based on Michael's early teachings from a decade ago. So thank you so much for having me here. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be here and share what we've learned. And hopefully some of you folks out there can learn something from this conversation. So thanks so much for being here. So let's see, I think I'm gonna dive in and share my slideshow that I put together. There we go. Devin, can you see my presentation?
Looks great, and I love the t-shirt.
That was so I was surprised to find that in there. That was my assistant was like, no, we're putting that picture in there. That's awesome. Social distortion. I was like, okay. So I'm looking moody and broody with my punk rock t-shirt on. My name's Forrest Castile with Castile Kitchen and Bath. We've been teaching effective tools for the successful management of sales, design, and production teams to leaders in the remodeling industry since 2019. And I'm really glad to be able to share some stuff that we've learned along the way with you here today. And please, as questions come up, don't hesitate to put those in the chat. I really love having conversations about this kind of stuff, and we can learn the most by actually having real discourse about this. I don't remember where this quote came from. If anybody can find it, I'd like to find out. I've been searching for it. Somebody said this to me a long time ago. The profit is earned in the sale and protected in production, right? So the production team isn't out there making a profit. The production team is out there protecting the profit. That's how you run a successful remodeling company. And this starts at the beginning, right? You can't hand your production team a pile of garbage and expect that they're somehow going to turn it into a rosy, profitable project that has satisfied clients, right? So when we want to design a profitable project, it starts all the way at the beginning. And it actually starts before that in sales. We're not going too deep into that. Kind of setting up appropriate budgets is going to be critical. But through the design process, building the right kinds of projects with the right kinds of detail, so that the production team can seamlessly pick it up and take it on and protect that profit through production is going to be essential. So today I wanted to start with kind of some basic business understandings. And if you've read either of Michael's books, you'll have a really clear vision on this. But just for anybody who hasn't caught up to that yet, and we think in terms of percentages. And this is where, Michael, on your P&L and everywhere else in your business, think in terms of percentages because it's so much clearer when you're looking at the data when you use percentages. In this case, I picked an example $100,000 project, and I wanted to show you kind of how the financials break down on a $100,000 project as an example of what might work for a typical remodeling company. Now, this number is going to be a little bit high if you really want to be successful, but some of us might be actually operating a little less than this, so I wanted to use this as maybe a target for some of those folks that aren't at this level yet. It's not really going to be the best target, but it's a good place to start. So the idea being that there's a separation right at the beginning between cost of goods sold, or COGS, versus the gross profit margin, right? So that's where the money splits as soon as the check comes in. The cost of goods sold is going to be a per project number that, this is the number that it actually takes to build this specific project. It doesn't have anything to do with overhead, the building, the lights, the owner's salaries, anything like that. This is just the money that's going to go towards the project, which is divided into three main categories, which would be materials. So this is nuts and bolts and boards and framing nails and whatever the things they are that you're going to buy and install on the project. Trade partners, and we call them trade partners, not subcontractors. And this is all throughout our company. They're known as trade partners. We don't use the word subcontractors. Subcontractors kind of it can have an unhealthy connotation that goes along with it. Trade partners are people that we work with together who also own their own company and do other work for other contractors or clients themselves, but they also are part of our team. It's not somebody out of the phone book. It's part of our extended team. There are trade partners in the business. And a portion of the cost of goods sold is going to go towards that. Plumbers, electricians, plasterers, painters, floor guys, that kind of thing. And then a portion of this cost of goods sold is also going to go towards your in-house labor. This is boots on the ground, in-house carpentry. And for us, we want to keep this number relatively small. In our company, this number is less than this. It's less than 15%. And that's because a really qualified lead carpenter has a narrow bandwidth, and we want to maximize the return on the investment with them. So the more work that a lead carpenter can get done, the less this number is going to be, and the more volume you can do given a production team. And then this person is the one who manages these two pieces in our structure. So that's cost of goods sold. This is the job by job. This is the money that's going to go towards a specific project built by your company. Gross profit margin is a little bit different. So this is the gross profit margin, and ideally we wanted a little bit less than this, but this is a good goal if you're struggling. The gross profit margin includes the two components. One is overhead, and one is net profit. These aren't the same number. And please understand, net profit this isn't jet skis and trips to the Bahamas. This is what we think of as the company's future. This stays in the company. It's company growth. It's opportunities. This goes towards your OCRA account, your operating capital reserve account. If you read Michael's books, this is the number that you keep in the business to grow and have a healthy company. This is your company's future. Overhead is everything else. This is the money that crosses over multiple projects. Overhead would include your office, your payroll. Now, if you're working on the job, you're going to have a little bit of both. Your overhead's going to cover your salary for being the business's owner, but you should also have money and labor if you're banging nails, because you're going to be paid as a carpenter if you want to be building a successful company. So we have the sales price. This is going to be 100% of your revenue, the checks you bring in, split into two categories: cost of goods sold and the gross profit margin. Those are going to be split into 5 different categories. That's materials, trade partners, labor in the cost of goods sold, and then overhead and net profit are going to be in the gross profit margin. And folks, this is a non-negotiable. This is your company's future. If you want to have your company's future, you need to have this number, and that's what this talk is all about. All right. Now, some people get a little confused about this, so I want to make sure that we touch on the difference between the gross margin and the markup. For our company, we've eliminated the word markup from our vocabulary because these numbers are not interchangeable, and for some people it's confusing. Now, the markup would be when you take, like, let's say something cost you $100, you're going to have a markup number that says, okay, we're going to take this thing and mark it up X amount, and that's what we're going to charge the client for it, right? And so it's a pretty common industry term. There's nothing really wrong with it, but when we want to target a margin, we want to be consistent in the language. And so having the whole team, the whole company understand that the margin is our mission, right? Get that? The margin is our mission. Write that down. The margin is going to be the difference between the price at which the project is sold and the cost associated with making or selling the product, the cost of goods sold. And then there's a ratio in there, and that's the percentage we're looking for. Now, so there's a table here. I put an excerpt from the table in here. At the end of this seminar, there's going to be a little scan code you can scan, and my assistant has put together a set of tools that might be helpful. And so I have a larger version of this table that shows a lot more numbers in it. But for now, let's say that for the company that we're looking at here, their desired margin is a 35% margin. You can see that the markup number is quite a bit different. It's a 53.85% targeted gross profit margin, a 53.85% markup to achieve this gross margin. You don't want to mix those up. That means you would take your materials times 1.538 to achieve this margin. Now, in our project management software, we have it tailored. We've tuned our project management software to eliminate the need for the markup language so that our whole company can be focused on this outcome. So we simply put everything in as a factor of the desired margin, and it spits out our project costs. And I can show you how to do that if you like. So the idea is we're eliminating the term markup from our company's vocabulary altogether because it's confusing for some people. We're focusing on the targeted margin because that's focusing the whole team on the same outcome. Is that making sense? So we're changing the language a little bit so everybody knows what our desired goal is. All right. This is an example of an estimating spreadsheet. Now, there's a lot of detail in this one. We have our original cost for the items that we're estimating with some sum totals. We have revised cost. This shows up in our system if anything changes, and there's nothing different in here. But if there's a change order, then we'll have some revised cost. If we lose control over something, we might see a revised cost, so we try to avoid that. The committed line This is when we get a purchase order approved from one of our vendors. We'll talk about purchase orders in another second, but the committed line is for purchase orders. And then we have this projected cost line. So this says, all things being equal, this is what we're expecting to spend in this category. So this would be the larger number of either the committed number or the revised number. But then as we're working through, and I'll show you another spreadsheet, the kind of the output of this later on, this projected number goes up as we start learning more about the project. Now, the way this spreadsheet is set up, if you look here, you'll see we have the cost line, the profit line, the total sell price. But this line here, this is our projected gross margin line, right? So this is that 35% number that this example company was targeting. And then as we're working through the project, and I'll show you how to do weekly projected job costing, this number is our windshield. This shows us how we're doing as we're working through the project, and shows us that, and this would be right at the beginning of the project, but as we're working through the project, this number will be a reflection of, if we keep going the way we're going, this is going to be the gross profit margin at the end of the project. And so this gives kind of like an early warning signal. If this number starts dropping, then we know something's askew. We'll go and figure out what happened. But we also want to target, okay, if this number slips down to 33%, as a team, what are our opportunities to improve the situation, get this number back up to 35% as a targeted gross margin? That making sense? I see some heads nodding. Okay.
Forrest, can I ask a question? How often
Yes,
do you
please.
update that spreadsheet?
So this is done weekly. We use Friday's totals. It's inputted Tuesday, and we have an output. It's inputted Monday, and we have an output every Tuesday that shows what our target margin is, all things being equal, if nothing changes. Good question.
So by Tuesday, you know if last week a job went over and you might be in trouble.
That's right. Yep. So we know that every Tuesday.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
This is another version of an estimating spreadsheet. I've included this in the tools at the end of the seminar. So if you want to click on that thing and download this, I put one in for a kitchen. I put one in for a bathroom. This is one that we used to use. We've since migrated into a more powerful project management software, but this is just a very simple Excel spreadsheet. It kind of shows all the different pieces that might go into a project. It also has 6 different columns. We've got the materials, the expenses, we've got the subs or trade partners, and we've got the in-house labor. And then we have 6 columns. One is we have a proposed column for each category and an actual column for each category. So as we're estimating the project, the inputs would be in the proposed, where we want to spend this much on demo, this much on framing, this much on plumbing. We're spending, let's see, the trade partners, we've got a plumber and electrician, so their numbers are going to go in here. And then in labor, I have this set up for hours, so we're estimating how many hours goes into each category, what's going to happen in each category. Now, folks, don't use lump sums. You don't want to have a 150-hour project. That's not going to be helpful for targeting a desired outcome. You actually want to have each hour annotated for each task. That way your team can see what the estimate was really supposed to be. If you just estimate 100 hours for this project, it's really easy to get 148 hours in and wonder what's happened. So this will give you real-time running labor feedback. As you're working the project each week on Monday, you would take the totals from last week, enter the receipts in each column under the right categories, enter the hours for each column, and then you'll be able to see real-time how you're doing as you're moving forward. That making sense?
So far, so
if anybody wants to use this spreadsheet and wants help with it later, just let me know.
okay.
Okay. So another key element for our team is involving production in the estimate. Now, back in the day when I was doing all the estimating, and thank goodness we've gotten to the point where I don't have to do any more estimating. But when I was doing the estimating, I would kind of decide for myself what the production team's estimates looked like, and then hand them the thing, for better or worse. Here's what I estimated it at. Go get them. And it created this disconnect in the company and it created some frustration on the production team too, because they really wanted to be successful. But one of the ideas with a production team is that you can't give a production team responsibility without authority. And we'll talk about why in just a little bit. But responsibility without authority is saying, hey, so here's what I expect you to do, whether you're able to or not, right? I need you to jump 6 feet high. I don't care if you're able to. And that creates a lot of discord in the production team, a lot of discontent. And it also creates a team that doesn't believe in the estimates. So for us, we have the production manager, and sometimes the lead carpenter will sit with the designer. The designer will estimate as well as they can all the components of the project. But the production team does a couple of things. They come in and they shine reality on the estimate. So, let's say if we're doing some moving walls, beams, structural stuff, designers aren't really going to be the best at understanding everything that needs to happen to put a beam in. They've done a lot of this, but each situation is a little bit different. When we involve the production team, they've done so much more of it. They can come in and say, hey, you're actually going to need a little bit of a different connection here. It's going to take more time. We're going to need some different materials. Or, hey, I understand you want us to cut the beams into the joist system, but have you considered in this case putting the joist on top, or putting the beam on top of the joist and hammering down? I think it'll help control the estimate a little bit. So they get to offer a little bit more reality to the estimate. But also on the labor end of it, if the production team is involved in estimating the labor, there's no more finger pointing. There's no more, you've saddled me with this impossible task. Instead, it's as a team, we put together this estimate. Now my job is to go accomplish it. So the estimate becomes not only buildable, but believable. Does that make sense? So you don't get this pushback from production. You didn't estimate it right. No, we estimated it together. We're a team. Another rule is, and I remember I did this back in the day, and I had some really hard conversations with my team before I finally learned the lesson. But as a sales and design guy, back in the day, there was times when I'd get to where it was time to sell the project, realize that I was over budget, and I'd be panicking, 3 a.m. trying to finish off this estimate so I can go sell it, whatever that is. And then I'd be like, well, what am I going to do? I got to lower the price in order to sell it. I messed up on the budget, or I lost control of design. What do I do? And I found myself cutting the hours with optimism, right? So I'd look at this and I'd be like, well, if they work real hard, I bet they can do this in 6 hours, right? And the truth was, no, it was estimated right in the beginning. When I did that, not only did I shortcut my team, but I totally took away their faith in my ability to estimate things, which means they lost the incentive to become accountable for the time. And then every time there was a time overrun, it was, you didn't estimate it right. Right. So never, ever cut the labor on the project if you're trying to control costs. Better off is to go back to your client and explain what happened, figure out together what you're going to do. Okay, so production needs to have faith in the estimates. If you don't allow enough time, production could believe the goal is unachievable, and that leads to really bad results. So production helps with the estimate. Another piece, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into this later, but as production's working on helping build the schedule for the job, and I don't know how many times, and put your hand in the air if you've heard this before. The production team gets out there. It's supposed to be an 8-hour task. They're not done in a day, and they're going to get halfway through the next day. And then you ask them what happened. Why are we 12 hours in? And they say, well, I don't know. It just took longer than, I guess it just took longer, right? And so has anybody ever heard that before? I don't know. It just took longer. Yeah, right. So, for us, the rule is if you need more time, you need to request more time before you've used your allotted time. You can't come back 12 hours late into an 8-hour task and say you need more time. Now, the intention of this wasn't necessarily to control time. You can't really control how much time they use. But for me, the intention, and there was supposed to be a graphic in here, we didn't get to it. But my intention was to get the production team focusing on the available hours up front, right? And so I think of an archer with an arrow, right? You got the archer with the arrow, and they're supposed to hit a target. A production team who doesn't know what their available hours are, is like an archer with an arrow, but they're blindfolded, right? Good luck hitting the center of that target if you're blindfolded. It's just not going to happen. As soon as you take the blindfold off, as soon as your production team can see all the details of the estimate, including the trade partners, the materials, and their allowed hours, they've got the blindfold off and they can clearly see what the target is. Just seeing the target changes everything dramatically, right? And you can't yell at a production team. You can't yell at a lead carpenter or beat them into submission or make them use less time. But if you show them how much time is allowed and help them figure out how to get there, you're going to see dramatically different results. Is that making sense? Okay, so imagine the archer, as soon as you take that blindfold off, oh my gosh, I can see the target now. I don't even have to be a great archer. I'm going to get much closer to that target if I can see it. All right. Each task has its own hours rather than one big bucket. A 150-hour project is useless to a production team unless they know how it was estimated according to each task. And then next up is a variance system. And I think I have somewhere in here, there's going to be a variance form. For us, a lead carpenter is required to submit a request for hours variance prior to using all the hours on a given task. So they look at a task. If they think, oh, this 8-hour task, I got into it and there's a problem, they need to submit a variance form and get it approved by the production manager before they use any additional hours. And it's a big no-no to use additional hours without permission. Now, most of the time, if you have a project manager or production manager who's going to be in charge of managing people's hours, what I encourage is just have them approve them, right? For a year, have them approve this variance form, because this is a really hard thing for an independent lead carpenter to do, is turn in this variance form. But you want to encourage it, so just approve the variance forms. Don't worry about it for at least a year. And then after years goes by and you get everybody into this system of, hey, I need a variance, I need some extra hours on this thing. I was planning ahead. It's not that I didn't plan. It's not that I didn't know the hours. It's that something's different on the project, or, I just need to put some more time into it. Here's my variance. Now, even after a year, most of the time it's legitimate once you get to this point. And then every once in a while, you'll get a lead carpenter who's all set to do something that's not part of the estimate, and you can catch it with the variance, right? So, hey, I'm getting into the demo on this, and once I get to the laundry room, this happened to us. The laundry room floor is just going to take more time. That gives the production manager time to say, well, hold on, I don't think we were doing the laundry room floor. Let's take another look and figure out what's going on and why you think you need more hours. I don't think that's even part of the project. Does that make sense? So it communicates. It enhances the communication between the on-site production team and the production management back at the office. Let's see. Okay, so clarity in the contract. This is the next piece. A clear contract that's estimated correctly needs to include the following 3 items. Now, the first one is easy. It's called inclusions. Those are the things we know we're going to install, the work we know we're going to do, right? And any designer, any estimator can put that stuff in there. That's a big part of the battle, but it's not nearly the whole thing. The other 2 items are much harder to do. One would be what we call exclusions. The other is assumptions. Now, how many of us know how to write good exclusions into a contract, right? And this is something that we've been working on for years, and there's always room to improve. How do we know which things need to be written into the contract that we are not responsible for, right? I mean, if I'm doing a bathroom remodel, do I need to write in here that we're excluding replacing the whole roof, right? I don't know. And there's kind of a balance in there. For us, plumbing is one of the big ones and we got hit early on with plumbing, where it was like, oh man, we got into this project and the plumbing is rotten. And so we got to replace the supply lines all the way back to the main. And then the client's talking about, well, you should have known this. It's a bathroom project, right? But we didn't have good enough exclusions in there. Now our exclusions generally read something along the lines of, rough plumbing is to be completed in the immediate vicinity of the bathroom area only, right? Any work required beyond the immediate vicinity of the bathroom isn't included in this estimate, right? That way, so we've clearly defined the exclusion, saying, hey, we've charged you for this much work. We haven't charged you for anything beyond that. Now there's a fine art to exclusions. Sometimes it seems silly, but what's remarkable to me, and when we talk about protecting the profit, it's amazing to me the assumptions that a client makes about what should be included, right? So it's not about what you think or what you know, but it's not uncommon for a client to get in there and start thinking that, oh, this should have been included, that should have been included. And then some of us are going to be tempted, rather than have an argument with them about what should be included, because we had a bunch of gray areas, a bunch of holes in our contract, then we start arguing with the client, and that's not the way to have a satisfied client. So we end up with a choice. I'm going to either argue with this client over what should have been included, or I'm just going to give away some free work to make them happy so I can get a good review, right? And neither one of those are really, really good outcomes. Arguing with the client or giving away work to get a good review, neither one of those are good outcomes. So having really detailed exclusions, here's the extent of our work, is going to help protect that profit. Assumptions are very similar. Writing in some assumptions. So one of the assumptions we make, and it's from a contractual standpoint, we're going to assume that there's no water damage in this home, right? Because we don't know what's behind there. So we're writing in the assumption, and even if we know that there might be some, we're going to write in the assumption that we're assuming there's no water damage in this home. If we find any water damage, and put this in the contract, if we find any water damage, here's how that's going to be addressed contractually. Does that make sense? That way it's totally clear what's included and what's not. Having a good contract is vital to protecting the profit. The contract should outline exactly what will happen and what will not. Exclusions minimize gray areas and holes in the contract. Really important to get that right. And then also in your estimating, in your design, the project needs to be figured out to the penny and to the eighth of an inch in the design process, not during production. So when we're building the project is not the time to be working on estimating. It's not the time to be clarifying numbers with the trade partners, and it's not the time to be working out the final measurements. Is that making sense? Okay. And we have 15 minutes left, so I'm going to start hauling ass here. Excuse me. Okay, trade partner bids and POs. So this is trade partner management stuff. Everything, and Michael, I'm so sorry. This is where I vary a little bit from your teaching. We don't have a limit on trade partner dollars. We include a purchase order and a bid for everything in the project. It doesn't matter how large or small. That helps keep us in control of the money that's going to be spent. So from our vendors, from our trade partners, fixed pricing. Purchase orders are the next step. Once we've sold the project, then we issue a purchase order to the trade partners and the vendors. It's kind of like a little contract. It says, yes, we sold the project. We're locking in this pricing. It locks in the bucket for that money in our project management system. So we actually can't write checks for any more than what's in a purchase order. So it eliminates all that stuff where, the painter comes in and says, well, I needed an extra gallon of paint, or there was this more work that we didn't talk about or whatever. No, we have a contract with you. You're going to do this much work. We're going to pay you this much. And so we're just going to stick with that price. Thank you very much. Now, if there is a legitimate change order, the client changes their mind or the work grows or something changed, that has to be handled with a change order system. We'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing with trades is that we need to be working with responsible enough trade partners that we can eliminate the phrases like, you didn't tell me that, or I didn't know that was included, or those kinds of things. We need to work with professional enough trade partners that they're responsible for asking the right questions so they can have the right amount of information about the project, right? So we're working with very high-end trade partners that know how to run a business, that are going to ask you the right questions because you don't know plumbing like they do, you don't know electrical like they do. They're going to ask enough questions so that they're able to price the project correctly. Making sense? All right. Build a strong network of trade partners, 2 or 3 of each type of trade. So 2 plumbers, 2 electricians. You'll have your primary and a backup, really important so you don't get left high and dry if something goes wrong. When you start the project, you want to pick your team based on desired outcomes, not based on price, right? So we assemble the team because this is the right team for the project, not because this guy costs less. Develop a system for managing trade partners, including communication, financial management, those kinds of things. Develop a trade partner agreement. And I've got an example of a trade partner agreement in our tool handout at the end of the seminar. And then maintain positive relationships by writing thank you cards and give them gifts and buy them lunch and do this stuff so that you actually buy them into the team instead of having this kind of separate us versus them relationship. Making sense? Okay. And then the third part of managing, protecting the profit is when we actually get into production. The first part of that is having an effective project handoff or a production handoff. So this is when the production team, the lead carpenter, project manager, on-site foreman, however you structure it, that's when they actually pick up the project and run with it. They need time to do this. They need time to study the project so they know the project completely. They need to look at it through their own perspective, their own lens. They need to be actively looking to find holes or problems with the project, right? And I'm not talking like, well, this is a terrible project that's underestimated, not that kind of hole. I'm talking about holes like, hey, so I see that this trim detail is a little bit complicated. What did you have in mind? I don't see a detail on it, right? That way in design, you can put together a detail so you know how it's supposed to be put together. And the idea, and I love this from Michael, I haven't figured this out yet. I wish I could. Michael told me a long time ago that a really good lead carpenter is going to ask you all the questions once up front and that they're not going to ask any more questions down the road. We're not there yet, but we're trying. We still have questions as we go, but we do make sure that 90% of those questions come out in the front end before the project has ever started, so we have time to pivot and make sure things go together well. So we're studying the project well in advance before we start so everybody understands everything. We call that owning a project, right? So the next team needs to own the project through a handoff. They've digested it, found any holes, asked any questions. They're actually ready to run the project by themselves without any support. Here's our labor variance form. This is when you're in production. It says approved or denied. Again, for the first year of putting this into practice, just approve them. Make it easy. Make it so that your lead carpenter wants the support. Make sure they understand this is us having your back so that when you're out there, you're not feeling like you're on your own. You're going to get in trouble. We're going to approve the extra hours. It's going to be great. Eliminate board holders. I remember one time I pulled up on a job site and there was one guy holding the 2x4 on the sawhorses while the other guy cut it, right? And that was when I decided no more than one guy on a project unless it's something really heavy or something really big that has to move. We do kitchen and bathrooms only, so we're able to do that. But eliminate board holders, and that's what we see. And Michael, I think you have a ratio in one of your books on like how much productivity goes down depending on how many people are on site. But for us anyways, kitchens and bathrooms, just one guy is really all we need on site, and that's where we see the most success. Use your hours variance tools, update your hours and budgets every week. This is the trade partner agreement. Really, really important. Read through this when you get a chance if you haven't, and you can use this, run it by your legal team, make sure you're allowed to do this. But a really, really powerful piece of documentation. The way I put this into work is first I beta tested it with some of the trades that we really liked working with and got their feedback. Hey, what do you think of this agreement? Is it going to cause any problems? Every one of our trade partners that we really liked working with said, yep, that's how we're going to do it. So we put it across the board to all of our trade partners. It eliminated 2 or 3 people right out the gate that didn't want to make this agreement, and that cleaned our operation up quick. Those people that didn't want to agree to how we think things should go, they left, and we had to find replacements, and it worked much better after that. One of the pieces in there is that no holes should be cut in finished surfaces without the lead carpenter's approval or the project manager's approval. Like electricians don't get to just blow holes everywhere. They actually need somebody to say, okay, we can live with that. Change orders. We have 4 different kinds of change orders. Please forgive us. It took us a long time to figure this out. When you get a chance to look through this, luxury change orders have a change order fee that's billed to the client as soon as the client requests a change. Oh, you want a different countertop? No problem. It's going to be $225 to figure out what that's going to mean for your project. Unforeseen conditions, repairs. The idea being that we figured everything out. That we get in there, we found some water damage. We're going to explore it, figure out exactly what it's going to cost. T&M's a bummer on anything, so do fixed pricing for everything on all these change orders. If you have any questions about change orders later, please check in, ask me about this. Devin, is it okay if I run a little bit over the 45 mark? Sorry, you're on mute. I'll just assume that's easy.
Yeah, go ahead. You're fine.
Thank you. Scheduling. This is an example of a Gantt chart. This Gantt chart has a baseline built in. So we can actually see not just how the plan is going, but how it's going according to the original plan. The blue line in this case it talks about what the plan was, and then the orange line talks about what actually happened. And in this case, we talked about strategizing, okay, how do we get back on track? And we were able to do that. Gantt chart scheduling is part of Michael's books, really critical. Most project management softwares will include something like that. But the idea is with a Gantt chart is it's not just about how the project runs, and it's not just what are we going to do if the project gets off track, but it's also how are we going to get the project back on track before the end of the project, right? So we never give in. If we start slipping days and something's going wrong, we never say, oh, well, we're going to finish late. We always say, okay, what do we need to do to finish on time? And we are now in 2024, 95% of the projects we finished on the day we expected to because of this kind of control over the scheduling, right? And so it's given us the control we need. And we don't give up. Even if we can gain a half a day, even if we can gain a quarter day, we do everything we can. Okay, what are we going to do to get back on track? This is the outcome of the job. So this is when we get into real-time job costing. This one's still on target. I wish we'd picked one that wasn't on target so I could show you what that looked like. But every week, we're putting the totals in here, the actuals. This is the actuals line that say, okay, here's what we spent so far on this project. The actuals total versus the revised. So we're supposed to spend $20,455. Right now we're at $18,860 based on how many things we finished. So it says completed. These are the things that got done. We're still targeting 35% margin. This project is going just the way it's supposed to. This is our feedback for the production team. I took this picture on Friday. So this is real time at our company, how the projects are running. You can see the dollar volume of each company, the day it started, the day it's supposed to end. We use project names internally, but our trade partners use addresses. So we have both of those on the board. This number is the margin variance. This is updated weekly. All things being equal, if we keep on our current trajectory, this is where our margin variance is going to be. So this project, perfect, we're on track. Perfect, we're on track. Bradley Dougherty, we are down 0.01%. I can live with that. Smith Graham, we're up 3/4 of a point, right? Miata Goodyear, this one's actually in closeout stuff. There's a weird little, somebody blew up a piece of crown. We had to order a new crown. So this one's just outstanding and it's down almost a half a point. Misi Jensen is down almost a whole point. And yeah, we want to know that. What's important for a company, I think, is knowing what your tolerance is for your variance. Our tolerance is 2%, right? So if we finish within 2% of our target margin, I call it a win, right? And that gives us room to wiggle. It gives the production team opportunity to do a little extra if they want to have some problems, whatever that is. Oh, you can see it here. Green means we're on track or better. Orange is 2%, be aware. Red is do something right now about your project because you don't have a successful project in the makings. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is what the production boards look like. It's updated every week. Every project is on here. Another concept is the numbers versus the perfectionist. We run our business by the numbers. Most people don't know what perfect means. They don't know what quality means. We run the work by the numbers. So that means that everybody knows what the desired outcome is by the margin. When we start hearing things like, well, we'll just get in there and see how it shakes out, or it takes what it takes, we know that we have a production team or a production partner who is not running the job by the numbers. They're just going to get in there and do what it takes, right? And the numbers are going to suffer. Be aware of the martyr versus victim syndrome. So the martyr is an aspect of the hero archetype. If we got a guy in there who's just suffering and who's a company man, but he's suffering, he says, they have me working too much, I'm super burnt out. That guy's acting like a martyr. He's going to be a problem. He's going to act like a victim later. He's going to be saying things like this to the clients. And eventually what's going to happen is he's going to be the client's best friend. They're going to love the carpenter and they're going to hate the company because they think the company is the problem. So this kind of attitude needs to stop right away. You're doing a good job, but you're not a martyr. You should be representing the company professionally and support the company by not making these kinds of statements. Really, you're in it for the company, you're in it for the win. Okay, top 3 reasons why a lead carpenter might feel grumpy. Now, this isn't any average carpenter. This is a lead carpenter or project manager. And we've seen this hold true over and over again, and we know how to handle it. But these are the reasons why you might have a grumpy production team. Somebody has responsibility without authority. They're not involved in the estimates. They're not involved in the planning. They're just told what to do and then failing and getting in trouble for it. If you have responsibility out there in the team, they got to have the authority to make some of the decisions too in order to support the cause. If your production team lacks purpose or appreciation, so if they're not bought into the company's purpose or mission, if they don't know why they're working so hard, if they don't feel like what they're doing matters or they're not appreciated, they're going to be grumpy. And then this is the one that we see when they're grumpy. If we know these things hold true, you're not planning well enough, and that's why you're grumpy. And so for us, a lead carpenter spends 1 day a week in the office planning. We budgeted for it. We charge the client for it. They need to be planning a successful project. If they're just showing up every day and seeing what's going to happen and hoping for the best, that's not proper planning, and they're going to be grumpy. They're going to be blaming the company for being overworked. All of our carpenters are responsible for all of their schedules. They're bought in. They take it on. They say, yes, I'm in. I'm going to do it. And so they have the responsibility, and they sit their butts in their office 1 day a week planning the next week, so they make sure everything is going to go very, very well. Good. Also, they should not be asking the client quality control or design related questions. That's a recipe for handing the control of the project off to the client. I don't want clients running our projects. I want our team running our projects. So we ask quality or design related questions to the designer. The designer helps with all this stuff, right? Or your supervisor handles all this stuff, but never talk to the client about quality control stuff. Daily logs are good. So pictures, descriptions of what's happening. That way you can see back at the office if there's going to be a problem and things don't get too far off the rails without you finding out. What to say, what not to say. Oh, just don't talk about change orders on site. For us, it always goes back to the office before we ever say the word change orders in front of a client. Sometimes it's, ooh, I'm not sure about that. Let me look into it, right? If the client thinks something else should be included. And then the project wrap. Okay, for us, we subscribe to the zero punch protocol. So zero punch and a completion list. This is key to our successful completion of the projects. We make a completion list well before the end of the project. Don't finish things up and then get out the blue tape. Make your list at least 2-3 weeks before the end of the project of everything that needs to happen to call a project complete. For us, and our reputation and pay schedule go hand in hand. We collect our final payment for every project right in the middle of the project. We call it the phase 10 or installation payment. There's no money left at the end of the project. And what surprised me, we did that in order to keep cash flow and control on our end of things. But what surprised me about this is how much our clients' anxiety evaporated about the finish up of the project. Once there was no money on the line at the end of the project and an understanding that we were going to do this completion list process and that if there's anything outstanding, we're not going to do anything for 60 days. We're going to come back after 2 months once you've moved in and started using the space. If there's anything wrong then we'll come in and tune it up. But we're not going to go around with blue tape and pick this project apart in order to call it done. Just move in, start using it, keep a list of any issues, and we'll come back after 60 days. Our clients' anxiety about the end of the project evaporated completely, and our client satisfaction went through the roof. Our profitability went up. And so the completion list is where you come in 2 weeks before, you make a list of everything that needs to get done. The client signs it, agreeing this is what it means to call the project done. It also talks about we've got a 5-year warranty, so don't worry about it. If anything's wrong, we're going to make it right. We do everything on the list and finish the project on the day it's supposed to be done. If some little stuff pops up, fine, we're going to take care of it. But if there's something missing, like if we're missing a cabinet pull, or if there's a void in the grout, or this stuff at the end of the project that could hang up a project, no problem. Let's just get on the list, that list for the 60-day tune-up. That way we can come back and do it all at one go. We'll have everybody lined up on that day to come back and do everything that needs to be done, move in. And we even tell them, hey, if you bonk the wall and chip the paint as you're moving in, just put it on the list. We don't care. We want to take really good care of you. Get that at the 60-day tune-up. It eliminated all the anxiety and left us with much happier clients and our profit margin intact. The key is you have to have a great warranty, you have to have a great reputation to be able to collect your final payment in the middle of the project. If you do have a great reputation, it feels scary, do it anyways, it helps. All right, and then the project review. So this is the post-mortem. This is where all the stakeholders, everybody involved in building the project is going to sit down in a room together. We try to make it a half hour. It's usually closer to an hour because we love to talk about these things. But we go through all the data on the project, right? So we're going over the profit margin. We're going over the baseline and the schedule. We're kind of examining the successes, the wins and losses of the project together and talking it through, right? And stuff comes up like, yeah, I missed that in the design, or yeah, it was actually, we'd had a couple change orders already, and this was a small ticket item. So we in order to keep the project going well, it was well within our 2% variance. We decided just to do this little thing to make everybody happy. So we talk about all that stuff. And then this is the biggest thing, and I've seen this be so impactful. Construction industry is full of defensiveness and finger pointing. I've seen this all over the place, and we've worked really hard to build a culture that doesn't have that kind of thing going on. In our final round, and we're really careful not to say you did this, you did that. We don't do that. In our final round, we go around, we take turns talking about, here's one thing I did well that I'd like to keep doing because it matters. So then something might come up, well, I planned this one really well and I saw how smoothly it went. Or, boy, I eliminated the words change orders with my client and they were much happy with us. I remember you talked about that martyr thing and I stopped telling the clients how busy I was. I'm just a professional, right? And here's what the impact, right? So we're talking about the thing I did well, and each person gets the opportunity. Let's celebrate that. Talk about the positives first. And then each person gets the opportunity to say, here's one thing I learned, one opportunity for growth. I learned this piece and I'm going to carry it moving forward because I think it's going to matter in the future, right? I learned about floor protection, right? I got some scratches on the floor. I had to do all this work to make the client happy. I really get that I need to protect the floors better now, and I'm going to take that moving forward. But we don't tell somebody else. We let each person own their own. And the amount of growth I've seen by people owning their own growth rather than being told by somebody else what their growth should be has been astounding. People, when they make up their own minds about the things they need to do better, they shoot forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Forrest, real quick question. Do your trade partners take part in the project review?
Great question. No, we don't bring the trade partners in on that. We do have a separate process and it's called a vendor visit, where we will, depending on our relationship with the trade partner, we will invite them in as a trade partner just to have a wins and loss conversation. And usually we do that if we start seeing a relationship that's kind of getting a little bumpy with a trade partner. We'll initiate a vendor visit, bring them in. We always start with the positives. Here's what we love about working with you. What do you love about working with us? What's one thing that our company can do to better serve you, our trade partner? And then we talk about, okay, here's the thing I wanted to talk to you about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. All right.
So I put up a QR code, scan this thing. I put together a packet of like tools that you guys can put to work. And if you have questions about them, don't hesitate to reach out. I've got Autumn's email up there. You can find my email. Or actually I can put my email in the chat, or maybe Devin, you can put my email in the chat.
Yeah, I'll send out a note later and
Yeah.
I'll include your email.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And I'll leave this up for another minute, but I'm ready to dive into some Q&A and have some conversations. What's this bringing up for everybody?
Okay, well, we do have a couple of questions, and actually I have a couple of questions too.
Great.
Let's start at the last few things that you went over. Is the 60-day tune-up included in the margin calculation and budget? And how do you calculate it?
Yep, we have some cleanup 2-minute budget in there. Usually it's 3-4 hours depending on the size of the project. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but it's just assumed that we're gonna have to go do this, and it's a profit center too. It's like, no, we're doing this stuff and we're charging you for it, so we're making a profit on that tune-up.
Okay, all right. By the way, I like the use of the word tune-up. That's it has a very positive feeling to it. As a
Oh,
homeowner, I would like to hear that. You're going to come in and do a tune-up on my project. I like that.
yeah, and the way we describe it is, cabinet doors. Don't worry if they're not perfect, because sometimes they move after the first several weeks, or you load a drawer down, it might not sit quite the same. We're going to come back after 60 days and make sure all that's looking just right.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that's great. So, I'll go over their questions first. Have you put together a template list of exclusions and assumptions going back to the contract side that get added to your agreements?
So I don't have a template for that. That's actually, I'm going to make a note. Um, we draft it based on the situation.
Mhm.
And that is for us, I understand how important it is. It's also one of the things that we have the hardest time getting right. And it seems like, so often there's this like, oh man, okay, make a note. That's another thing we need to be talking about in the contract. Right. And so for us anyways, and I think the term I use is consistent deviation. Make a list of all the problems that come up and then start looking for patterns. And then you can start targeting, okay, we need to develop better language for these things for improvement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so a question I had when you talked about um, when a job gets behind, you're starting to see things go bad. What kind of things do you do to bring it back in line?
Oh, that's a great question. So, and there's two ways that a project can go sideways, right? One would be, well, I guess there's three ways. We talk about the margin, we talk about the schedule, and we talk about client satisfaction, right? And either one of those three things can get a little bit sideways on a remodeling project. If it and with the profit margin, what we sit down and we basically explore every potential opportunity to try to rein things in or curb things, right? We still want to deliver an exceptional experience. But when we put our heads on, and there's a funny thing that happens with the human brain, if we look at a problem and say, I can't do it, your brain agrees. Yeah, you're right, we can't do it. But if we look at a problem and initiate our brain and say, hey, what are my opportunities? And so we have this, what are my opportunities to have an impact here, right? Then all of a sudden we have these amazing minds and they'll start putting ideas in front of us. And for us, we have this exercise, we call it write it down. This is a stupid name, but we call it write it down. So we sit down, if we need to improve the margin, what are our opportunities? And we're going to write down everything that we can think of, and we'll just brainstorm stupidly. It doesn't matter. We're going to find a pot of gold under the stairs when we demo them, right? Or whatever. And but the idea is we're trying to not curb our brains. We're trying to exercise our brains and say, hey, let's just talk about some ideas. I don't know. So we go through this, we write down all the opportunities, and then from stupidest to least stupid, we start crossing them out. And then whatever the least stupid ideas are, we give it a shot and see how it goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think when you talk about trying to bring a job back in line, I think the first concern I had was that cutting corners. But you're
Yeah.
not talking about.
No, no, you can't cut corners. That's just not going to work. But sometimes you can think of a different way to get something done.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you found a pot of gold?
No, never, not yet.
Not yet.
Still on the list.
If you did, you'd have to give it to the homeowner anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry about that. Let's see. How were you able to implement the full payment in the middle of the project without pushback from the client?
Yeah, great question. And we've actually, it's funny because we've received very, very little pushback about it.
Mhm.
We've just shown up with the confidence that that's the right way to do it. So our pay schedule is, and we do a design fee and construction deposit. It's a little bit different than the retainer system we used to do. So for us, if it's a $100,000 project, we do a 5% design fee, and it's a separate fee from the whole project. That's so we can pay for the development of the project. We do a 5% construction deposit. That's a seriousness deposit that says, are you serious? Because it's like escrow. We're putting this in account. It's going to help you build the project, but we're not here to design projects we're never going to build. We want to make sure we're all in because we're serious. Then we do a 35% construction agreement deposit. So it's a signing deposit. So when we sign the contract, 35%, that's so we can start ordering materials and getting people scheduled and doing all that. We do a 30% SOW, that's start of work. So that's when we get the tools out of the truck. And then we do a final payment right in the middle of the project. And we explain to the clients, this is because we need to use your money to build the project. We're not a bank. It's your project, so you need to pay for it. These are the chunks we need to be successful doing this so that we can have everything go the way that it's supposed to. We explain how the closeout finish up process works. We have an exceptional reputation, and that's key to this. You can't pull this off if somebody thinks you're going to take the money and run, right? But every once in a while, if somebody pushes back, I'll explain, hey, I just need you to understand that payment isn't worth our reputation. There's no way I would damage my reputation by taking your money. That doesn't make any sense at all, right? And then if there's continued pushback, my typical response is, well, that's too bad. I was looking forward to building this project with you.
Okay.
And it works.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I have a question going back to
Oh,
the,
and Devin, what's
yes,
surprising is that there's been so little of that pushback. When we've just brought it out as this is the way we do it, most people are just like, oh, okay,
that's how it works.
that's how it works. Yep. So all of that resistance is inside of us. It's not in the clients.
Right, right. Um, okay, going back early on, you were showing a couple of the spreadsheets, and the thought that crossed my mind is how much time gets tied up in data entry? Is there, is, as in putting together even the weekly, this is the job status and all that.
Absolutely.
Do
Yep.
you,
Great question. So our project management software does a lot of the data compilation. So it tracks everything.
Mhm,
It takes Rich about an hour once a week to put together the reports that go on the production side, right? So he has to
mhm.
digest the whole project and put his reports up. I like him doing it because that gets his finger on the pulse either way, right? So for him, the report is getting the information, but it's also keeping his finger on the pulse.
What's Rich's
Rich
position?
is, oh, so our structure is we do design consultant, that's the sales position. Designer, that's the design estimating position. Production manager, that's Rich. He oversees everything that's being built. And then lead carpenter, that's boots on the ground managing the project and doing the work.
You have one production manager?
One production manager oversees everything. Yep.
Okay, and from an accounting point of view, is your production manager is overhead
He's under overhead. Yep.
and your lead carpenters are in cost of goods sold?
They're in COGS. Yep.
Okay, your lead carpenters, though, I think I heard you say they spend one day a week in the office putting together schedules
Yes.
for the next
So
week.
we bill to the job 1 hour per $1,000 for project management by the lead carpenter. So
$1, 1 hour per $1,000.
yep, and that's the number that seems to work well for us. So if it's $100,000 project, we give them 100 hours to sit behind the desk and figure things out, or drive around and meet people, or whatever the lead carpenter needs to do. That's not actual tools work.
Okay, all right, good. Next question, the design fee isn't escrow?
Nope,
Question.
it's a fee for figuring out the project. It doesn't bill to the project at all. It bills to our design center. The idea being that the design center should be a profit center, right? We should be making a profit on the design if we can. Don't use it as a loss leader.
Right, and if they don't go ahead with a project, you got paid
And
for
we're
this.
hopefully we're at least a few dollars ahead. You
Yeah,
know?
right.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm gonna, the next question, going back to those spreadsheets, you said you use a CRM, but you also had that kitchen budget spreadsheet. Is that part of your
So no,
CRM?
so it's interesting. The blue one, that spreadsheet was how we used to do this before we took on a project management software. So that was a spreadsheet that I built for estimating and tracking. And it actually worked really well. It was very simple. And I did my data entry. It took me a couple hours a week to go through everything and get the data entry done, right? And so I put that in the packet just for folks who aren't ready to take on a project management software because it worked really well for me. Our project management software, all of the designing and the budgeting is built into the software and that connects with QuickBooks, and it feeds that data as money's being spent. It feeds it back into the project, so we have real-time updating without having to lift a finger.
Okay, so there was two steps to this for your business. First of all, you did it yourself with those spreadsheets similar to what you have.
Yep.
And then you moved to a project management software that made it a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, it connected all of our tools so that we didn't have to manually make those connections.
Okay, and I think I've lost my thought. Oh, what is your project management software? Do you recommend one?
Well, unfortunately, I can't recommend the one we use because they've stopped selling it. We use CoConstruct, and CoConstruct has been bought out by Buildertrend. And so Buildertrend has been kind of scrapping it for parts to build up their system, but Buildertrend doesn't yet have some of the core ability that CoConstruct does. Buildertrend does not yet have some of the core ability that CoConstruct does. Once it does, we're going to be migrating over to Buildertrend. Once it's fully outfitted the way we need it, we'll migrate over to that new software.
Okay, all right.
But there's a whole bunch of softwares out there that do this, and it's kind of everybody's got their own business and their own way of thinking. And so for when we're taking on a project management software, it's important to meet with people and take tours and ask people in a similar type business what they use and how they use it. And it can be really impactful it's also kind of a daunting process. It took us it was like a 3-4 year onboarding process to get the software to really work for us. And the only way we were to do it is by being stubborn and committing and taking this, following through to figure this thing out and put it to work for us.
Right. So are you going to go through that again with Builder Trend?
We are. The problem with co-construct is that they're not going to improve it anymore. So it's going to naturally fall behind.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the stuff you used before you used project management software.
Yep.
Those spreadsheets are going to be included in the handout.
Yes, I converted to them in Excel for everybody. You use them if they're helpful. If you have any struggle with it, don't hesitate to reach out on what I was thinking or how I was thinking it should go. Or use it as a starting point to kind of start building up your own spreadsheets for estimating and tracking the expenses.
Okay, super. Coming back to your business, what's your employee count and divisions of labor? I think you kind of covered the division of labor.
Well, so we've got about 12 people on our team right now. I'm looking at hiring, and this is scaring me, but I'm looking at hiring 2 new lead carpenters at the same time, which I don't want to do. But I like them both, and so I'm worried about culture shift and hiring too many people at the same time. But I think we can do it. I think it'll work. So we'll be up to 14 before long. Our projects run about 10% labor. So if we sell $100,000 project, the on-site labor costs us about 10. Ask me more about that question. Which part are you wanting to understand?
Well, I want to go back to your hiring lead carpenters. Do you hire already trained lead carpenters? Do you do the training? Do you?
Yeah, we've kind of grown to the point where we need to bring the people in that have the right kind of experience. Our margins go down if we're training somebody too long, right? Because you've got to pay another body to be there, a board holder, if you will. The more and more we're having better success because we're more confident in our systems, bringing people in that have the experience, because when you bring people in that are too experienced and all of a sudden they have well, this is how I've always done it kind of attitude, right? And it can be hard to train somebody up who's kind of set in their ways of doing it. But we've become so solid in our systems that when people have that, it's like, well, thank you for that, but this is the system and we need you to learn it. and so we're seeing a lot more success actually getting people to buy in just because of our confidence in what we're doing.
Okay. All right. So do you have a hard time finding employees?
Yes and no. Last year was a really strange time where, we keep ads running all the time, all year round for design consultant, designer, and lead carpenter. And we have a HR program who one of my administrators will do a virtual consultation where she'll just ask them a bunch of questions to see if they might be a right fit. If she thinks they're a good fit, then our administrator and our production manager will interview lead carpenters. I'll interview designers and design consultants. And so we're constantly looking to bring in new people, whether we're ready to hire them or not. And when we find somebody that we think is a winner, then we start bringing them in, training them, onboarding. Training takes 6 to 8 weeks for whatever the position is, and sometimes more. And so we figure by the time we get you trained up, we'll just figure out how to put you to work.
Okay. So you're doing in-house training for your carpenters?
Yep. So our training isn't like, how do you nail crown up, right? You got to know that. Our training is, here's the project management software, here's our system, here's our expectations, here's how you run 2 or 3 projects at the same time, here's our communication standards, here's how we manage the margins, here's how we, our training is like how to do it our way.
Okay. So you expect them already to know how to do the work?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. What's your typical job size?
I think 2024, it was between 72 and 78,000.
Okay. All right. It's a good size job.
Yeah.
All right. I am about out of questions. Gantt chart. Your project management software does the Gantt chart for you?
Yep. And one of my favorite features is the baseline view, where we lock the schedule once the project starts. And then we can track how the project was planned versus how it ran. And that gives us so much data, because like a he said, she said, or I think here's what happened, or here's why it went off the rails. We can go back and pinpoint. The example was, and this is where we talk about consistent deviation. 3 years ago, we were seeing bathroom projects running long, right? With some consistency. And so we went back and we opened up all of our baseline views on all of our projects. And because we had these ideas of what it was, but we didn't have data. We opened up all of our bathroom projects and looked at all the ones that ran long. And we were able to find this vortex where the split was from what was expected to what actually happened. and it was right at rough plumbing, right? And we were like, okay, interesting. And so we went and talked to our team, like, what's up with the rough plumbing? They're like, well, nothing. The plumbing's finishing on time. We're like, well, what do you mean the plumbing's finishing on time? Like, yeah, but we're not able to get inspections because the plumbers aren't pulling permits on time.
Uh-huh.
Right? So we're like, oh, and so now we found that consistent deviation by using this data. And so we were able to talk to the plumbers about permits. The production manager, Rich, he was like, well, the heck with it. I'm just going to pull permits myself for the plumbing. Right. And so he was like, because I want it done on time and we couldn't get this individual to do it. And so we were able to fix the bathrooms by tracking that data back to what that deviation was.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your company, what's the difference between a designer and a design consultant?
Design consultant is the sales position. So that's the initial point of contact. The design consultant's the one that they do all the networking and they're bringing in calls and they're qualifying the leads, making sure there's going to be a qualified buyer. They set up the consultation. It's an hour and a half consultation for the design consultant. They work through buying the client in, navigating through we call it scope and budget. It's navigating like the client's expectations, what they want to invest versus what they think they're going to get out of it. Getting those things into alignment, working to demonstrate that we can solve the problem correctly to the client, and then asking them if they're ready to work with us and collecting the design fee and the construction deposit. And then the design consultant also extends to being a client concierge throughout the process. So they act as me, really, is what they do, making sure that everybody's happy and everything's going well. They help work through change orders if there's going to be money. Anytime there's money, the design consultant's involved. And basically kind of act as the backstop for the whole team. The designer is the one that figures out the project, right? And it's not really in collaboration with the design consultant, right? So the designer's doing drawings and helping with selections, working with trade partners to get pricing, working with vendors to get, putting the whole package together. The design consultant's the one that says, hey, I think you might be over designing this, or I don't remember this as being the project. It's, and kind of helping hold the pieces together so we don't over design.
Okay, so the design consultant is working directly with the client and the designer is backing up the design consultant. Is that?
Yeah, and the designer works directly with the client too over a series of weekly meetings where they work with the client to design the project. The design consultant is sales and backup. So we've split it's really normal to have a sales design or a sales design person, right? A sales designer is a kind of a normal thing. I had so much trouble finding people that could do both well that I split the position into sales and design, but they collaborate for the development of the project.
And does a different person do estimating or?
The designer does all of the estimating.
Uh-huh.
And when I say estimating, it's not really estimating. It's more like exact price estimating, right?
Right.
The only place
where you keep your margin.
Well, where it comes into an estimate is when we talk about labor, because that's one of those things that we can't get exact pricing from somebody else for. So they do that estimating, but then the production team comes in and audits their estimate for the labor to make sure that it's going to make sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. By the way, I think Michael liked your, this is the getting the purchase orders. This is it. This is my price for everything. So.
Good.
Okay. Do you charge for the initial design consult?
I do not. I'll give anybody an hour and a half of my time, right? If we can help, great. And if not, that's okay. For me anyways, as a design consultant, there's a little prayer that goes into it and, whatever. But really what I'm praying for is that I just want to be of service to my client, to my company, to my family, right? And help me do a good job serving these people as well as I can. So for an hour and a half, I'm not really thinking about profit. I'm thinking about service, right? But then it's, if I can solve your problem well and deliver great value, then let's bring you on and figure out your project.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the design consultant and the designer. How do you, are they on commission?
So the design consultant is on a base plus, right? So okay. I'm not going to get too specific, but it's a regular hourly wage that's kind of a pittance, and then a commission based on a construction agreement, not on a design agreement, a sold construction agreement, right? So there's two contracts. One's the design agreement saying let's figure it out. The other's the construction agreement saying we figured it out, let's go. So they get a commission based on a construction agreement. They can have a draw if they want on the design agreement, right? So if they're like, hey, I'm hurting, I sold a design agreement, okay, great, let's give you some money, fine, but you don't actually earn until we get to a construction agreement.
Okay, and the designer is paid how?
Designer's paid hourly.
Hourly. Okay.
Yep, and we make sure they're paid well.
Okay, all right. This thing just moved on me. What's your role in the company right now?
Oh, I love my role. So I every once in a while I'll do a sale where I'll act as the design consultant. But
Uh,
mostly I'm in coaching, mentorship, training, teaching, and systems development. So and thank God for that. After 10 years, I get to just help everybody make sure that their jobs are going well.
okay, all right. Back up to the design. Are the design consultants full-time?
Yes.
Okay, all right, super. So when you talk about your role in the company right now, you are you're this you're the owner, but you're the support for the company.
Yeah.
Is that
So
what you're saying?
and it's interesting because coaching and mentorship, my job is to teach them how to be successful, not tell them what to do.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so, and one of the tricks there, somebody comes to me, hey, so here's what's going on. What do you think we should do? Right. And in leadership training, what we learn is when somebody brings you a question, the right way to respond to it is to say, well, what do you think we should do? Right. And almost always, whatever they say, I'm going to say, oh, that sounds great. I think we should do it. You know what I mean?
Okay. How long did it take you to reach this point in your company?
This has been going on for 6 years now. So I would say that it took, 4 or 5 years of concerted effort and intention to be in this position, and learning how to trust other people, learning how to develop other people, learning how to be support for other people and coach learning how to develop systems. So for me, when something goes wrong, I tend to not think it's a person problem. I tend to think it's a systems problem. Right. So when we have problems, I'm like, oh, well, there's a hole in the system. If you have to remember something, it's a terrible system. Let's make it so you don't have to remember anything. Right. And so that's my job, is to try to analyze that data and understand which systems are working and what we need to further develop. Also, new systems like project management stuff. Oh, we're going to take on this new system. How do I work in the background to get it ready for the team? CRM, we're taking on a new CRM system. I'm excited about that, but I got a lot of work to do to get it ready for them. Tracking systems, I'm revamping all of our tracks. So I was sitting here, like, before this conversation, I was sitting here for the last 2 hours just working on all of our company metrics and kind of taking a fresh look at what metrics do I want, instead of how, because we built all these systems and cobbled them together over time, and now it's time to put it all together in one system that makes sense. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, these are all the metrics I really want. These are success metrics that make sense to me, and let's figure out another way to get that.
Okay. So somebody just asked the question that hit my brain too. What is CRM? Help me out.
That's client relationship management software.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And so the idea is you can track every aspect of the sales pipeline using a good CRM. And so you can see not just like what's a closing ratio, which we all need, but also where's the breakdown points? Like, at what points are projects starting to fail or have trouble, or at what point are we seeing clients consistently frustrated? So we can get that kind of feedback, so we know where to actually target our improvements.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask you one last question that just came in from Bob, and then I think we're going to wrap this up. What's your exit strategy? And I'm not saying that because you look like you're getting old with the white hair that's happening. It looks pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
But what's your exit
Yeah.
strategy?
And I love that question. Thank you so much. For me, I am called to service. I want to help other people do what we've learned how to do. We have a fantastic, beautiful, so I have two priorities right now. Quit working, retirement. No, I never want to quit working. I love what I do, right? But I want to do it on my terms, not like because I need to, right? So I want to work on my terms. One is with this company, Castile Kitchen and Bath. My mission is to be required at this company 3 or 4 days a month, right? As in a consulting position, right? I don't want to be here day to day. I want to be the guy they call when they need help, right? So I want to look at metrics and help them see stuff, but also like, hey, Forrest, we need help training this design consultant. He's struggling to get his closing ratio up. Great, let me come in and interview him, maybe go on a couple ride-alongs, whatever it is, and see how I can help you. I want to be a consultant for this company, right? And the owner, of course. I never want to let this thing go if I can help it. So that looks beautiful to me. But then full time, I'd like to be in coaching and mentorship for other people that were where I was, that want to be where I am.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. I want to tell everybody that, first of all, the question's been asked a couple of times. Yes, this has been recorded. Hopefully the recording worked. I will be sending out a note in the next day or two. Give me a little bit of time here. With a link to the recording, and I will include also the information. If you didn't catch the QR code, I'm not going to include the QR code, but I will include the email addresses that you can send a note to Forrest or Autumn and get some additional information. We're going to continue our workshops that we've been doing with contractors. We'll start those again in February. I'll start sending out notes on those. And Jason, you'll get that in the next day or two. That his question. Once they send you an email, how long until they get the downloads?
So one of the things, actually, so if anybody's going to log into that thing, if there's any other information you want, let me know, because I don't mind throwing in some more gifts or some more tools. So if there's anything you're curious about, I probably have a tool for it. That's my job. So when you scan the thing or in Autumn's email, hey, I'm interested in this piece, I can probably send you some more stuff. It depends on how many things people want to see, because it may take us a minute to compile some more information and send it out to everybody. But I would expect, hopefully by the end of the week, if not mid next week, we'll be ready to send out a packet to everybody that was interested.
Okay,
Yeah.
super. All right, Forrest, this has been really good. You've great deal of information, good information. I appreciate everybody. Forrest, I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate everybody that was here. And do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, thank you. Right. You especially, Forrest.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thank you, Devin. And I just want to say it one more time. If you haven't bought the books already, please buy the books. Michael wrote these books, and there's so much good, usable, down-to-earth, practical information in Markup and Profit and also Profitable Sales. Those are still our Bibles after all this time. Each new design consultant is required to read Profitable Sales because that's what gets them up to the level. And Markup and Profit is just such accessible, usable information for building a successful remodeling company. Buy the books, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest.
All right. We're going to say goodbye. I'm going to end this. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Forrest.
All right.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.